Hello, everyone. Back online using the Ethernet cable again. I think that worked really well last week. Let's hope that wasn't a lucky fluke. And a few people checked in already. We'll start as soon as the clock turns over. Hey, Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhasa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhasa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhasa. Okay, greetings everyone. We'll start a few talks on the topic of cosmological future time. I like this this topic because it opens up a number of interesting avenues. It gives us a window into the ancient Indian worldview, which really helps. I really believe that it helps to understand the Buddhist teachings if you have them in the context of the milieu, the cultural and intellectual milieu of the time. Nothing arises in this world being context. I'll start very quickly with the good news first. I titled this "End Times Prophecy," which is a little clickbaity, I know, but I'm looking at how I want to look at how the Buddha and the early, and not just the Buddha personally, but the later generations, the early Buddhists up to the time of the commentaries, how they viewed the unfolding of time, particularly stretching into the future. And the good news, I would say, is that if you are to take these texts that then are near the let's go lifetimes to come. I think I'd like to begin with a little bit of a discussion about the Indian culture's view of time, of long time, which is quite different from the Western view. In the West, even before Christianity, but more so after Christianity arose, there was what we could call an eschatological view of time, meaning that time is linear. There is a beginning, history happens, and then there's some kind of climactic end point that it's leading to. So it's a fixed episode that follows a series of steps. In the pre-modern Christian interpretation, it was generally thought that the whole history of the world would take 6,000 years to correspond to the 6 days of creation. And that the world was calculated as having been created sometime around 4000 BC, and it would come to an end sometime around 2000 AD. So that's quite a short span of time. Even for those people in modern times who don't take the Bible prophecies literally, I think they the view of time as linear lingers, that there's a sense of history unfolding in stages, and there's still an idea of a beginning and an end, even though the time frame is greatly stretched. India never had that view. In India, time was always seen as cyclical, and in the shorter time frame this is kind of a trivial, obvious to make that in light, and we have a yearly cycle. So cyclical time is kind of an obvious observation, and they applied it to the broader stretch of history, and particularly with Buddhism. When as Buddhism developed, there came to be the idea that there was no beginning. There's no ultimate beginning and there's no ultimate ending. The cycles stretch in both directions. The Buddha himself, of course, is well known that the Buddha refused to pronounce on that. He said that the beginning of this samsara cannot be known. Classified as one of the versus so he left the question open because for two reasons. One, because it's something we cannot really know. We can have theories about the world originating, the universe originating in a Big Bang, for example, but we've no way of knowing for certain. No one was there. None of us can really know that for certain. So it's a useless speculation on the one hand, and on the other hand, it really has nothing to do with the work of ending suffering. The Buddha would sometimes pronounce on these kind of for example, in the Nikaya, the sun multiplies in the sky. But it's very clear if you read the text that he wasn't giving this just as a kind of an interesting story, but it had a point to hammer home the idea of impermanence, that nothing is impermanent. Nothing in this world is permanent and lasting. Even, as he says, even the great Mount Sinnaru and even the mighty ocean will one day be destroyed. So there's nothing that lasts, nothing that persists. So the whole sutta was a way of expressing impermanence. So he gave it for a didactic reason to do with his broader teaching. Of course, these details are greatly expanded in the commentary, and I plan to get into that those texts a bit in subsequent pronunciation. Leosa, the great commentator, he states this explicitly. He says that great samsara is without beginning. And I think there's a quite logical reason for this, because a real foundational axiom of Buddhist thought is dependent arising, that nothing arises without a cause, nothing arises randomly or arbitrarily. So if we take that principle and extend it in time, if we go backwards in time, there can never be a first moment, a first beginning, because that would have to be without a cause. And that means whatever time you go back to in the past, moment X, without a cause. In the theology of the West, and this also goes back before Christianity, even found in Aristotle, the idea that of a causeless cause, which the Christians had as the creator God. But in the context of Buddhist thought, that just begs the question of what caused this. You can't have a causeless cause. That would violate the dependent origination. So you would have to examine how this being or this impersonal cause came into being. So it makes more sense to just assume that the wheel of samsara has always been rolling. And this idea sometimes seems strange to Westerners because we're so imbued with that linear. It's actually quite natural to the cycles. Like visualize a circle. You go round and round a circle, but you can't find a first point of origin in the circle. It's always just whether you go to the clockwise or counterclockwise direction, it just goes on forever. Likewise, into the future, there's no final termination of samsara, or the conditioned or manifest universe as a whole. However, there is a beginning and an ending of this world, this particular world system. In our modern scientific view of the universe, that would be the Earth and the solar system. Which is structurally is quite different. The Chakrawala, which is generally translated world system, is centered not on the sun but on Mount Sindaru. And around Mount Sindaru are ring mountains and a vast ocean. And in this ocean, there are 4 islands. And one of these islands is Jambudipa, on which we live. The sun and the moon rotate around Mount Sindaru. And it's night when the sun is at the back of Mount Sindaru, on the opposite side of the mountain from us. But like the solar systems in modern scientific cosmology, the Chakrawalas are vast in numbers. In fact, again, according to Buddhaghosa, there are a number of these world two-dimensional planes. Existence, our history is in this one world system. But each of these world systems has a lifespan. It comes into being and it passes out of being. And there are cycles within cycles, which we'll also get into more detail subsequently. There are cycles in which this world system comes into being and is destroyed, but within that cycle, there are smaller cycles relating to humanity, and it's not a linear progress. It's an up and down that we have an existence that becomes more and more Dewa-like, I would say. Our lifespan increases. The conditions of life to decline, and we decline and become more and more animal-like. And these are very long cycles of time. And there are 18 of these within the span of a world system. These ups and downs. So all of history is seen as taking place within these cycles. Now, this cyclical view of time is not only a Buddhist idea, but is embedded in the broader Indian culture. It was just assumed by the culture in India. It's the way they looked at time. The implications of the important is just a part of our human experiences are just part of a cyclical existence that goes up and down, up and down. There's no progression like we have in Western thought. There are various theories of history, and probably the predominant one, which is actually a kind of a naive one in a way, is what used to be called the Whig theory of history, that humanity's on a course of progress all the time, from primitive to more refined and a better understanding both of technology and of society. This completely alien to the Indian way of thinking. There was a kind of timelessness in thought that come and go, expressed very clearly in the Jataka stories, for example, that are supposed to have happened in the distant past and even in previous world systems in many cases. But the social structure is always the same as the India of that time when they were written down. And even place names and so on, like Varanasi will occur, that there'll be a mention of Varanasi and, other places in India in previous world systems. So it's like this. It's not that things repeat. They don't have to. But there's no progress. It's kind of a dreamlike view, that things just go round and round over and over. This, I think, one of the influences on Buddhist thought here is that this encourages the idea of the futility of samsara, which is something the Buddha talked about a lot. How many times do you want to be reborn and go through all this stuff again and again and again? There's nothing new under the sun. It's all so you've always been doing that. Been there, done that a billion times. Why do you want to do it more? As the Buddha said, how long do you want to go on filling the cemeteries? Of this that's in the modern scientific view, but it's very different from the pre-modern Western view. Like I mentioned before, the world to the medieval thinker, the world had a whole lifespan of 6,000 years, whereas the time frame for Buddhist cosmology is measured in kappas. There's a kappa, or Sanskrit is kalpa, means an aeon or a world age, and a mahakappa is the unit of time for the whole lifespan of a world system, and it's incredibly long. The Buddha said it cannot be easily reckoned in years or hundreds of thousands of years. He gave an analogy. He said if you had a block of solid granite or a cube of 12-kilometer granite, and once every 100 years a sparrow flew by and brushed it lightly with its tail feathers, that block of granite would be worn down to nothing by the brushing of the tail feathers before the end of the kappa. So it's this kind of a way of saying it's really, really, really long. Don't get caught up in trying to put a number on it. But it is finite. That each world system has a beginning, goes through these up and down cycles, and then comes to an ending. And then there's a period of time when there's empty space where that world system was. And that also lasts for a whole kappa. And then a new world system arises. Or energy that is said to be of the beings who perished in the old world system, which again is a logical tie-in with the broader Buddhist view that our experience, our existence is determined by karma. And if a being dies, if he's not enlightened, if he's not a fully arahant, then he dies with ignorance and desire in the mind stream, and the mind necessarily takes a new vehicle in order to continue that existence. And if the whole world is destroyed, there's nowhere for the being to be reborn, but that karma that remains latent for a very long time and then expresses itself by creating in this kind of blind way as this whole new world system for the beings to be reborn into. Do the next predictions for the future of humanity in this system, and then the broader, longer view of the cycles of the universe as a whole. So I'll stop there, and we'll have a look at what's going on in the chat. See if there's anything to address there. Greetings from Cottage Grove, Oregon, where end times is a popular topic. Okay. You feel like you're close to the end times out there in Oregon, eh? Ajahn, a forest monk teaches Abhidhamma, saying that the Chakku Chitta is not just the color and shape of the object, but rather color, depth of things, and how far away things from each other. And he says, Bhikkhu, one should see it. Well, I don't want of Abhidhamma. It's really an ongoing endeavor. And yes, Bhikkhu Bodhi is mostly deriving that his manual from Abhidhamma Sangata, which is a commentarial work. But there are different ways of interpreting the original Abhidhamma text. They're not. I don't think it's as cut and dry that we can just say one interpretation is correct. Okay, the end. Oh, sorry, this is jumping around on me. The end times prophecy is only the end of our current world system, right? Yes, correct. So there will never truly be an end of time. We're perpetually trapped in the cycle of samsara until we reach nibbana. Yeah, that's correct. There's no final ending. Just as there's a beginning, your person, if you're not, so the same principle applies to a whole world. It's like parallel Earth next door universe, each a little different but strung out across time. Yeah, I think that that's a good modern analogy. That for all these different world systems, they're not identical, but they're all very similar. Same kind of. It said East Chakavala has Central Mountain, Mount Sinaru, and the 4 islands. They're all built on the same blueprint. The idea that karma is responsible for creation of the physical universe reminds me of an idea in quantum physics that consciousness is necessary for the existence of events. Yes, I think that's a good observation, and I've thought about that and talked about it sometimes. The connection between the idea of the observer effect in quantum mechanics and the necessity of an observer to collapse the wave function. Um, that we could see the wave function as sunyata, as the potential of nothing being manifest. Everything is void, but there's a universal potential, and that the consciousness and the actions of karma, which is tied to that, causes specific events to manifest. Thank you, Ajahn, for the stream. Bante, do you think the current technological advancement will persist and the lifetime of humans reduce? No, I actually don't. I don't subscribe to the weak view of history. I think um, this is taking maybe down to a different level of discourse, but um, I think we've kind of peaked already in this civilization, and I don't think there's going to be just an endless technological advancement. There'll probably be a technological reduction. Uh, 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 talking about over 100, 200 years. Just as when the Roman Empire fell, they lost glass making, they lost cement making. There's a number of things that the Romans knew how to do that were lost because you don't have when the human chain is broken and there's no master glassmaker to pass on his teaching to his apprentice, then the whole technology is lost. And when there's nobody around, when society's declined enough and broken down enough and become chaotic enough, there's no one um, learning how to maintain and repair electronic equipment, then we lose all our electronics in short order. Jen, the suffering of strangers and friends alike in my life attracts my thoughts daily. Climate change and instability adds to this. How does one handle feelings of futility and hopelessness? Um, yeah, that is actually a very profound question. And it's part of the Buddhist practice, I think, to be, a big part of it is to maintain your center even as things are falling apart. Just to be be calm and centered and know once you know the Buddhist teachings, you know that this is samsara. It's always going to be broken. Things are always going to be imperfect, and you don't suffer by expecting them to be perfect. Uh, and you work first on yourself and get your own mind and heart in centered and in a good shape before you can really help anybody else. There is no arupa jhana in early Buddhist era, isn't it? No, the Buddha talked about arupa jhanas. So that's right from the beginning. Maybe we can persuade you to write a book on the subject of the similarities or parallels between Buddhism and quantum physics. Um, yeah, I don't know if I really feel. Yeah, that's interesting, and I like that topic, but I don't really feel like I have enough knowledge and grounding in the physics. I have just a kind of a dabbler's knowledge. That really should be written by someone who understands the physics on a better level. and that's it's been done. I don't think it's ever been done really well. I've seen some people writing about that either they my impression of anything I've ever read that compares Buddhism and physics is that the author either doesn't understand Buddhism very well or he doesn't understand physics very well. We really got to find somebody who deeply understands both. The thought of candidates in an office is fascinating, like president is always being replaced. Samsara feels like nothing but predetermined characters and consciousness taking birth into them. Yeah, that's like for example the the deities like Saka and Mahabrahma. They have a lifespan, and they when they pass away, there's a new Saka, new Mahabrahma. It's more like Saka is more like an office in a sense. There's always a Saka, there's always a Mara, although these are finite beings that have a long lifespan, but eventually they pass away. And I think that's probably how the ancient Indians viewed their kings and emperors. And these are the individual personality was not that important. They were kind of an archetype. We need a Buddhist physicist, indeed. Okay, so I think that's seems to be everything from the chat, unless anybody's got a last minute. Okay, somebody pop something in there. We'll do this. Some Bante, sometimes in talking with a friend, a random thought like "screw this guy" comes up. I feel like I did not intend to think that. What are these causes of these thoughts? Well, you're yeah. I mean, that's natural human behavior, but it's still that comes from a defilement. Like an arahant would never have a thought like that. Um, so you haven't purified the defilement of ill will completely. But don't be too hard on yourself. I mean and unless you're an arahant, you're going to have those kind of thoughts come up now and again. That doesn't mean you're a bad person. Okay, so I'll take my leave, and we'll see you again.